Hello and welcome to 007. And I'm your international man of mystery, Matthew Mills. And although, as you can see, I'm totally rocking the Doctor No lookalike look, which seems every Bond villain has to have a Mandarin collar, I did in fact fail the evil villain aptitude test and scored far too low on the prima donna megalomaniac scale, it seems. But there you go, that's the breaks. And in this, the latest episode of the 7 lecture series saga, Bond is back. And for the avoidance of doubt, this was created for your eyes only on October the 24th, 2023, because there are various allowances that were correct at the time but may change when you actually come to watch this in the future. Now, there's always a preamble which sets the scene, and here's our very own Ernst Blofeld, Jeremy Hunt, the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, and from the Treasury of Love in his last budget, he's announced a series of swinging cuts and freezes to personal allowances for income tax, capital gains, dividends, and savings, which form the backdrop to our story today. And of course, the stakes are high as the Chancellor takes a view to a killing. His diabolical plot is due to unfold over the next 5 years with reductions in a number of these allowances. Um, and he's expecting to make over 3 billion quid from the reduction in the dividend tax allowance and an extra 1.6 billion in capital gains over the next 5 years in a plot that will affect over 5 million people. So high stakes to play for. And here's one of those 5 million. And the heroine of our piece today, this is Jane, who you'll remember from a number of other presentations we've done in the past. And Jane is an accountant who works for Cake and Eat It Limited. Now, 5 years ago, Jane was fully engaged in some diligent financial planning towards her financial independence and retirement. And at that time, she was on a salary of 45,000 a year, and that made her a basic rate taxpayer. And she'd saved significant sums over that period. It's about £1 million invested here. And specifically, she had £100,000 invested in what's called a collective account. It's an investment, a collection of investment funds, which is subject to the capital gains tax regime. And at that time, 5 years ago, she was able to make around 12,000, a little bit less than that, but around 12,000 per annum tax free. And if she made any more money from that, then excesses would have been taxed at 10% if she took them out from her collective. Jane had structured her investments across a range of tax wrappers, including the collective and a pension and an ISA, on the basis of the tax allowances that were available to her at that time. And if she was to have retired on those sums of money 5 years ago, using her income tax allowance from her pension, she could have taken about 12k from there with no tax. As we've said, with her collective, she could have taken about 12 from there with no tax. And there's no tax on ISAs, so let's say she took another 12. On a basic of 45k, once you take the basic rate tax away from that, that nets down to about 38. So what you can see from this is that her diligent and prudent planning at that point 5 years ago, based upon the allowances that were available to her, she'd have pretty much been able to provide her income from her investments with very little tax. Now, flash forward to today, and you can see that Jane's investments have grown a little bit, which is to be expected over a 5 year period. There's a good probability of that. But as of 2024, her personal capital gains tax allowance drops to just 3k. That's less than a quarter of where it is today. On a much larger sum of money that her investments have grown to. So there's much less that she can take out before she starts paying tax. And because she's now a higher rate taxpayer, she faces a 20% tax charge on any excess beyond that 3k. So the chances of her collectively being able to deliver her a tax efficient income have been massively reduced by the actions of Jeremy Hunt in his most recent budget. But of course, there had to be another evil twist to the plot, and that is that Jane's personal allowance for income tax has been frozen until 2026. which means that as she draws money from her pension, taking progressively more to cover a rising cost of living because of rampant inflation, she has to top up her income. And if she tries to do that from her collective, the capital gains tax has been reduced to such a level that she's probably going to pay some tax on any money she tries to take out there, leaving only her flexible ISA reserve of money to draw from, which she'd ideally like to preserve. So the situation is looking precarious and serious, basically Ernst Blofeld's evil plot is coming to fruition, and it's a sky full of tax about to fall into the treasury. And of course, just at the point where the plot becomes completely desperate, there's also an utterly incredulous plot move, and it transpires that Jane is not, in fact, an accountant for the purposes of this lecture, but that she's on His Majesty's Secret Service and just operating as a deep cover agent as an accountant. Now, of course, this is a narrative trick that only works once because, as you all know, you only live twice. But as you would expect from our heroine, 5 years earlier, she kind of had a suspicion that this was coming because she's very good at her job, very slick, very suave. Pressed a button on her watch and created a plan B with a gadget provided by Q. And that takes the form of 100k investment into a bond in her portfolio rather than a collective, and a bond being a single premium life assurance plan designed specifically for investment. Now, it just so happens that we got hold of the original briefing notes from Q on the use of the investment bond. This particular tax wrapper, which has now formed part of Jane's Plan B, B for bond, obviously. So it's a single premium life insurance. It's based upon life insurance. It's a fairly old structure. It's been with us for decades. You can own it jointly or singly, or Jane, obviously being highly independent, would own it singly. Wide range of investments that you can choose to hold within a bond, actually for clients of SE7EN, identical to anything you might hold in your ISA, your pension, or indeed a collective. What's important about it is the tax treatment, is that you can withdraw 5% of your investment annually with no tax whatsoever. Equally, if you don't use that 5%, then that unused allowance gets carried forward. So for example, after 10 years, if you haven't taken any money from your bond, you've got 10 times 5% that you can take from your bond, 50% with no tax whatsoever. Equally, in terms of actually managing the money, because we might not want to hold onto the same funds all the time, underlying funds are deemed to be owned by the bond provider in a custodial sense. You can switch between them with no tax. And also the bonds are deemed to have already have paid basic rate tax before any money is paid out. What that means is that for a basic rate tax, there's no additional tax even if they take an excess beyond the 5%. So as you can see here, Ernst Blofeld looking a little bit worried now, because in practice, what this means is flash forward from the point where Jane set up her bond. She now reaches the point where she wants to start taking some money, and she's accumulated 5 years of 5% allowances, which means she can take 25k from her bond, absolutely tax-free. Plus, going forward, she's got 5k a year that she can take out without any further tax liability, regardless of the level of tax that she's personally paying. Further, as everything comes together, what Jane might be able to consider doing, depending upon her personal circumstances, is with reduced drawings from her pension, so that she doesn't go over the personal allowance, because of course that's not going to be going up to a 2076. So you keep her total income lower, and then supplement that up to the basic rate level with additional drawings from her bond, which means there'll be no additional tax there, which means that she might be able to continue providing her income without paying any additional tax, plus also to preserve the flexible pool of funds that is sitting on ISA that she can draw into in the future. And as you can see, with that potential tax mitigating strategy using the investment bond, Ernst Blofeld has been struck like a thunderbolt, because it's denied him his plans to raise additional money from Jane and the other 5 million. And with that surge of adrenaline, we lurch towards the end of this lecture. But what have we learned? Well, what we've learned is that changes to our tax allowances mean that we all face the spectre of paying more tax. However, bond is back and offers some useful tax planning opportunities. It's far from perfect. Bonds have been around for us for a while. They were in fashion for a while. Then when capital gains tax allowances went up and collectives came into fashion because they were more tax efficient, they faded. They've now come back mainly because the capital gains tax allowance has reduced and the tax benefits that are available from the bond wrapper could be useful again, and potentially provide a quantum of solace for your investments and your tax planning as the environment becomes just that little bit more hostile. Now, obviously, we recognise that these lectures have a license to thrill, but we must behave responsibly. And now it's time for a couple of inevitable disclaimers. The principal one, first being that as a cogent adult, you will know that the value of investments can go down as well as up, and that past performance, while it might inform future trends, absolutely cannot guarantee the outcome of your investment. You might get less back than you put in. And it's true the world might not be enough, but this little video has given us an opportunity for some absolutely some corking puns, and we hope you've enjoyed it because it's intended to inform, to educate, and to entertain. And we hope we've done that. However, it most certainly does not represent financial advice in any way, shape, or form. And if that's what you'd like, then get in touch with us. And on that note, we'll see you soon.